So before I get started, on the material outside and before and stuff, all the material says I'm from Visa Inc., and that was true up until a couple of weeks ago, and I left Visa and I've joined another company. And with that in mind, I wanted to say this, that I'm not here on behalf of or representing my current employer, because I didn't have time to run it through all the approvals and stuff. If you want to know who I work with, you can come talk to me afterwards. I'm just not going to announce it up here. So I did work with Visa, and now I work for another large financial institution. Now, my story starts a really long time ago. It starts in the 90s. So for most of you, that's not that long ago. But you have to understand, for me, that's when I was a snotty teenager. And my dad had bought me one of these. Some of you may recognize it, some of you may not. This is a 14.4 modem. It was the first modem I got. Actually, it was the second modem I got. I had a 1200 baud modem for an Amiga, and then lightning hit the house and it destroyed it before I had a chance to go online. So years later, when I saved up the money for my own computer, my dad bought me this, and I got exposed to the wonderful world of BBSs. So this is where I learned everything. Now, BBS, this is exactly what it looks like. Nice art and stuff like that. And you can see there's downloading files and file directories and mail, and what was best for me was the text files. And these were text files that explained how to do things like how to get free phone calls, how to tap into your neighbor's phone, how to steal credit card data, how to create fake credit cards, and how to do carding specifically, how credit cards work, all kinds of cool stuff. And one of my favorite one, when I was first starting out, there was a text from some person in Chicago, and it was about hacking McDonald's. And it was legitimate. So what this kid did is he worked for McDonald's. He had a job at McDonald's, and you learned that every night the manager would go and input all the information into the computer. It would dial up a modem, connect to some mainframe somewhere, and he would type in what he was doing. And every transaction he typed was printed on a dot matrix printer, and the manager would just throw those out. So he would dumpster dive in probably the greasiest dumpster and find all these printouts that had username and passwords and the phone number into the system. So he goes into the system and he gets his friend a job at McDonald's and writes a guide on how he did it and how to break in the numbers and everything like that. And I read that, and that was probably one of the more formative texts that I read when I was younger. And I was giving a talk in Chicago, and I gave the same story, and a gentleman comes up to me and he goes, I was part of the incident response team for that breach. That kid was arrested, and the other kid was fined and put on parole because it was hacking. Now, at the time, the laws weren't as strict, but he still did hacking and stole money from McDonald's. But I was just like, wow, this guy's a hero. It's like, you read something when you're young, you never think you're going to meet someone who actually had anything to do with it. Now, one of the things that I got exposed to was DataPack. DataPack was an X25 network that ran across Canada. I learned this through text files. This is an example of a text file about DataPack, and explains everything that's going on, explains how to connect to nodes, and explains how you can connect to other nodes like Telenet, TimeNet, SprintNet. I used that information to start exploring the web. Long distance in Canada is ridiculous. It's super expensive. I didn't have the money as a teenager to go calling places overseas or in the US. Actually, not even out of town. It was so expensive. But I could use this to connect to other systems, and probably mainframes, that I couldn't access otherwise. So at the time, this is who I thought I was. Right? This is the scene from War Games. This is him hacking Whopper, which is a mainframe that is used to control the thermonuclear arsenal. And that's how I was pretending I was being. So fast forward about 10 years, I join a consulting firm, and I come with a lot of experience in Linux and Unix security configuration, and all that stuff. And so I come across, and I join the firm, and I'm like, yes, they're going to put me on these awesome audits. I'm going to have a lot of work to do. It's going to be great. And they put me on mainframe work. They just put me straight into the mainframe space. And I thought, well, that's great for me because I always loved the mainframe. I was always interested in it. I was always fascinated by it. Terrible idea for them because I had no experience. So they send me out with these checklists, and you're off to go do checklist audit. And here I am, some 20-year-old, and I'm telling probably some of you people here how to run your systems, having never touched them or seen them before. I'd bounced around consulting firms for a bit. And then in 2009, late 2009, more like 2010, I joined Visa. And I joined Visa in their internal audit department because I had background with large financial systems and because I had experience doing mainframe audits. And then I worked there for a couple of years, and then I joined the information security team at Visa, and then I left and joined my current employer in their cybersecurity red team. And a red team is sort of like a secret penetration testing team. Currently, if you're going to get a test done, you go and you ask someone and you say, hey, come do a test. A red team is, we just show up, and you don't even know we're there. The point is to not know we're coming. So while I was at Visa, that's sort of when the passion for the mainframe really kicked off for me. I started doing my own personal research. Someone pointed me in the direction of ZPDT, which is what it was called at the time. They've changed names a whole bunch of times. And I thought to myself, I've learned a lot. I can't be the only one who has my background in information security and interested in hacking and all that stuff. I can't be the only one who's thinking like this. I can't be the only person who would be interested. Maybe someone else would like to hear this. And so I started speaking at conferences. And I started giving various talks. So I gave my first talk was at, let's see here, there we go. So I gave my first talk at B-Sides Las Vegas. Small talk, 30 people, that's it, there's 30 people in the room. Then I gave another talk at ShmooCon, which is a IT security professional conference in Washington, D.C., and it was a room about twice this size. And there were still only about 30 people in the room. And then I gave a talk in Chicago, and another talk at B-Sides. This one was specifically about the breach that happened in Sweden, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Then I gave a talk at Black Hat in Las Vegas, which was a room about this size and about the same number of people. And then I gave a talk at DEF CON, which was a room about double the size, and there was standing room only. So there is interest. Has anyone seen my talk? A show of hands if you've seen some of my talks. Okay, so that's about what I expected. It could go either way when I was rehearsing. I thought it might go not a lot of people or way too many people, and then you don't need to be here. On top of doing the talks, I do another thing that I like to call the Internet Mainframe Project. And what that does is I started sort of searching for mainframes on the internet. And so funny story is I used a tool called Masscan. Masscan uses all your bandwidth to scan the entire internet. And I ran it at home, and I went to bed, and I woke up, and Comcast had turned off my internet. And I got an email on my phone that said, you have a virus. Your internet's off till noon. Fix your computer. And so I didn't do anything. I just didn't run the program again, and I have never had a problem since. And so I reached out to some people who have the resources to scan the entire internet, and they're interested in the work I'm doing. And I said, hey, can you scan port 23, 1023, 23023, 992, and 9992, or 4 9s and a 2? And they said, sure. And they went off. And then I got thousands of IP addresses and thousands of open ports, and I rescanned them with a tool called Nmap that I had patched to support identifying mainframes. And I found 332 3270 sessions. Now, there are FTPs and all that kind of stuff, but this is what I cared about. I just wanted to get those screens. And then I wrote a tool that goes and logs in and grabs screenshots like this of internet-facing mainframes. Now, this one is one of my favorites, but not my favorite. This is the one that sort of gave me pause, and I couldn't sleep at night, because if you can see that down there, this is a military mainframe that is internet-facing. Now, when I saw this for the first time, actually, I'm getting chills now as I'm talking about it in front of this big room, I couldn't sleep. I spent the night tossing and turning every time a police car, an ambulance, a fire truck drove by. I thought, that's it, they're coming for me, that's it. This is the end of it. Sure enough, nothing happened. I mean, it's no different than going to a military website. It's just information that's free and out there. I didn't do anything wrong. And in fact, this screenshot was taken in April of last year. And I actually don't think it's online anymore. So here's another interesting one. You guys might recognize the brand. It's a car company. Another interesting one, this is, if you can't read that, that's the Court Information System of Raleigh, North Carolina. Some of you who manage these systems may be in the room today. I'm hoping. This is my favorite, though. This is my favorite. If you look in the very top left, can you see who this belongs to? Yeah, and they just updated. Before, it used to be a blank screen and it just said Egypt Air on the top. And now they added this, congratulations, the migration is complete. And you can see all the systems that run on this mainframe, which is kind of neat, right? So when I saw this, I was like, this is amazing. Cargo, fuel management system. My dad was an airline pilot, a commercial airline pilot for years, so I'm fascinated. I was like, this is perfect. This is like a dream come true. I've also found other kind of interesting things. For example, of the mainframes that I've found online. So of the 332, only about half are using SSL. And of the half that are using SSL, only about a third have valid SSL certificates. The others are using self-signed certificates. So some people are chuckling because they know what that means. The SSL certs are invalid. They're either self-signed or they've expired. And some of you are saying, and who cares? This is a tool that does a man-in-the-middle attack and will steal credentials. So here you're going to see an example of someone stealing FTP credentials from someone logging into a mainframe. Now, I also patched this tool to support stealing TSO credentials. So here you see the username and the password. And for those of you who are going to be reading my slides later in PDF, here's a screenshot of that tool in action. So now, those 50% that are unprotected, you can steal credentials. So that's great. Now it's like you can drop a pin in the room now. So this section is going to be a little rough to get through, but this is from a, air quote, hacker perspective, what I see the current landscape is. Now I've been in the IT security side for about 10 plus years. I've grown up in it. I've seen where it's coming from. Right now, there's really two kinds of testing that you get. You get penetration testing, and you get vulnerability scanning. Now, vulnerability scan, really easy. You go, you take a list of open, known vulnerabilities to a platform. You run a scan against the system. You take the open ports, and the open ports will come back and say, hey, I'm Apache version 1.6. And then the vulnerability scanner will go in its database, and it'll say, OK, version 1.6, that's vulnerable to this kind of attack. You need to be version 1.6.1. Raise an alert. That's all a vulnerability scanner does. Now, what a penetration tester does is they take those reports, and then they say, oh, it's vulnerable to this kind of attack. Let me see if that attack actually works on this platform. Let me take that report, let me take those vulnerabilities that we know about, and test them. But they also go above and beyond is if it's in the scope, they might start stealing data. Well, they might start doing all kinds of cool stuff on the environment to show that they could get into it and what damage they could cause. So if they can access core system resources, if they can shut things off, they're going to demonstrate that because it raises the risk of the report that they're writing. And so in this environment for penetration testing, there's really two kinds of tests that you can have. You can have a white box test, which is you're meeting with the developers, you get all the information, you've read all the guides, everything's available freely to you. And you get a black box test, which the scope is, here's an IP address, come back in a couple of months. You can do whatever you want. If you can find guides on this, go for it. We're not going to share information. Now, currently, as I've seen at many places, there's not really much mainframe penetration testing going on. In many places that I've been, I haven't seen it. Now, I know it's going on in some places. I know some people here do that. I know IBM has services that they provide. But it's not, if I told you today that I had a Windows system implementation and we weren't doing any security testing on that environment, I'd get laughed off the stage. But right now, it's scattershot in terms of what testing is being done on the mainframe. And some of the reasons I've tried to outline here, this is just personal opinion, but some of the reasons for me, there's a lack of skill set. I am the only person at conferences talking. I'm the only one at those. I have looked, historically at DEF CON, there has been 2 talks about mainframe security, mine and one other guy who was talking about retro hacking. So he was talking about like VAX VMS systems. There's not really much appetite from the enterprise to do this kind of testing. Enterprise is there's much bigger fish to fry. They have Windows and Linux to worry about. They got malware on desktops to worry about. They got mobile coming up that they got to worry about. We know the mainframe is secure. We don't need to worry about it. So there's not much appetite there. And then you have the political power that you guys hold within the corporation. You guys have a lot of political power. And so this is an example of a story. I went and I said, hey, I want to do a port scan of the core mainframe systems. I want to check all the open ports and see what's running on them. And the chief operating officer said, that's a great idea. Go ahead. If there's a system outage, you're fired. And I thought, OK, I'm not going to do that because I'm not stupid. And I know full well, even if I didn't cause the outage, I was going to get fired no matter what. So I'm not going to do that. And it's that problem, and the other challenge, and that's the last bullet, is the availability. People are more concerned about their system availability than they are about having it tested. And in the Windows and Linux world where I come from, you just assume it's getting tested all the time. If you put a machine on the internet, it's just getting hit nonstop. It's just background noise on the internet, just constant port scans, malware trying to get in, it's just nonstop. Now, on the other side of the fence, you have vulnerability scanning. So for vulnerability scanning, you guys are probably getting forced to do it today. And if you're not, you're going to get forced to do it soon. PCI is forcing you to do it. Auditors are forcing you to do it. Executive management's forcing you to do it. Someone's forcing you to do this. You know, all these breaches that happen have gotten people nervous. They want you to start doing this kind of scanning. So I'm going to give you an example of Qualys. Qualys is an industry standardized scanner. There's others like Nessus and some others, IP360. And this is a general scanner that you use. You set it up, and it scans your whole network, and it does really nice reporting, and you can do scheduling, and it's great. You can do authenticated scans and unauthenticated scans. It uses public databases to do those scanning, so it has resources, and it pulls from CVE, from MITRE, and all those kind of fun places. And it is completely useless on the mainframe outside of some common issues, right? Why is that? Qualys doesn't support ZOS. Neither does Nessus. Neither do any of the vulnerability scanners. Because they rely on public disclosure of vulnerabilities to do their scanning. And what do the big mainframe vendors not do? Publicly disclose vulnerabilities. So what is it checking against? It's going to catch small things. It's going to catch things like, oh, you have an SSL cert that's invalid. Oh, you're running a version of Apache that's 2 versions old. But does that even apply on the mainframe? Is that even a security vulnerability on the environment? Qualys doesn't know. Qualys thinks you're running it in Windows or Linux or Unix or something else. They have no idea what environment that is. So what you end up having is the scenario of, okay, so we fixed all the SSL certs and we removed that Apache server. Great. Now our mainframe is secure. Look, we have green reports every quarter. No vulnerabilities. So you're just doing compliance for compliance sake at this point. That's all you're doing. You're appeasing, like I put here, you're appeasing the PCI gods. That's the only person who's like, oh, great, you have a clean vulnerability report. I can write that up and be gone. They know, we know, nothing good is coming out of that.